her, and many of you have an affiliation with the University of Utah. She has been the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Utah now for 4 years. The first word I ever had about Ruth came from my colleague at the University of Illinois, who called me up one day without me knowing what was going on and said, "I'm really sad and I'm really glad." And he said, "I'm sad because Ruth Watkins is leaving the University of Illinois, but I'm glad for you because you are going to be delighted with her on your campus." It's been proven to be prophetic. Ruth spent 20 years at the University of Illinois in a number of leadership capacities, including teaching, Provost, the Dean of the College of Science, or Liberal Arts and Science, and a number of other capacities. And then she was enticed to come out to the University of Utah and work with President Pershing in the administration of the University of Utah. Much of her academic work has been funded by the NIH and the Department of Education. In Utah, she now is working with the deans and department chairs on a number of very critical issues for the University of Utah, and I might say, in addition, higher education. One of the things that she is doing, which is what she's going to talk to you today about, is the balance between quality and access. And she and others at the university have done a terrific job. And so I'm very pleased to introduce to you Dr. Ruth Watkins.
Thank you all. What a privilege to be able to join you today. I see lots of familiar faces in the room and a number of people that I hope I get a chance to meet. I've just set my timer, so I'm going to try to be very disciplined and stop talking and give you a chance to ask questions as well. With asking, where are my Utah alums in this room? Quite a few. Holy cow. This must be the Utah day, right? And everybody who didn't raise their hand, I see Associate Vice President Raymond Times-Jones is a Utah fan and alum in every way, and lots of others in the room. So this is a Utah crowd, definitely. So what I'm going to try to do today is tell you a little bit about the story of the U, and what I hope you will pick up is a story of a university that is very much in transformation, on the way up, moving forward, accelerating in a period of rapid change, and that rapid change is incredibly positive. I'm going to speak particularly about students and student success, as John alluded to, sort of the kind of balance of how we ensure that we are opening the door of access and making sure that we provide the kinds of experiences that allow our students to succeed at the university. Then I'm going to stop and answer questions as you have them. So, as John mentioned, I joined the University of Utah 4 years ago as Senior VP for Academic Affairs. And that job is usually called Provost. It means you're in charge of everything academic. The Chief Academic Officer, I have the job that Dave Pershing used to have before he became president. And I'm really in charge of the main campus side of things. And one of the privileges of that, when you come from another institution, John mentioned I've been a dean, I was a vice provost, I was an associate provost, I had a lot of different jobs, and I was a professor before that. And I felt like I was pretty well prepared for the University of Utah. I thought I knew a lot about higher education, a lot about students, a lot about faculty, a lot about research. But when I came, I knew that I needed to learn about the University of Utah. So I learned a lot about the wonderful culture, the traditions, the history of the U, and you might look at that photo and say, well, that's the must, I guess, right? We know the must. The must is an important part of the Utah story. So within the first few weeks that I was at the university, I had a very profound experience. And it was a little bit different than what I expected. I had a visit from a student named Teresa. And this student told me her story. She came in, she said, I'm really trying to graduate. I've been a student for about 7 years. And I really want to get through school, and I work, and I want to make my way through my degree. And so I started to offer my usual set of suggestions, and I said, well, we have online courses, and you could take some of those, and those would help you. And Teresa said, well, I've finished all those general education courses. if I can't get my upper division courses, it's gonna be another 7 years. I have 2 children, I work full-time, I have the dream of finishing my bachelor's degree. If I don't finish my degree, I can't move up in my workplace. What options are there available for me? Now, after I heard Teresa's story, I began to realize I needed to learn more about my new university, about the needs of our students, and to really think with our faculty creatively and differently about what we're doing at the University of Utah to help our students succeed. And I will tell you that as I began to dig in and learn more, I learned that at that point in time, fewer than 60% of our incoming freshmen were graduating with a degree in 6 years. That's sort of a national benchmark, the 6-year mark. Fewer than 60%. Yeah, wow, right? Not good. And the national average for 4-year research universities is about that same number. This is a huge issue for higher education in America. Fewer than 60% of students who enter college as first-time, full-time freshmen are leaving with a degree. That had to change. We have to do better for more people. Why am I so obsessed with graduation and completion of the degree? Because the big benefits accrue with the completion of the baccalaureate. Those big benefits are you reduce your risk of poverty, you reduce your risk of unemployment, you increase lifelong earnings, and maybe most importantly, the opportunity to engage in meaningful work. I am sure there are people in this room, and you know many successful individuals who didn't finish their college degree. I think that is much more difficult for our students now, and it is truly a risk factor throughout life. So it became quite an institutional imperative for us to make some changes. I'll show you where we are right now with our graduation rate. And you can see we've made good strides. If you look from 2011 to the present, we've moved up a full 10 percentage points in our graduation rate. Progress, but we have a ways to go. Then you can look at what happens to students 8 years. We grow almost another 10 percentage points at 8 years after high school. That's good. What I would like to see happen for you is to get that 6-year rate up to the 75% or so level. Then we would be where we should be for a flagship research institution. So this is part of the transformation that's underway. First to second year retention, the sort of 90% of our students come back for their second year. So if your tables are, there's 9 of you around the table, 10 of you around the table, 9 of you are coming back as sophomores, that's good. We're doing pretty well there. We've got to get more students through their degree. This student's name is Glenn. Glenn is another great story for us. Glenn is a student who started college and then he left us and drifted away. And during that time he drifted away, he was working, he had 2 children, he got married, he had 2 children. Obviously he was a pretty busy guy. It wasn't that he was doing nothing, but it was taking him far too long. So the university started a program to reach out specifically to students who had drifted away from the university. Within a year of graduating, to offer them a scholarship to bring them back to the institution and to get them through their degree. That program is working very well thanks to private support of donors. Now, why is that so important? This slide is a little bit complicated, but if you take a look, you can see what is the cost impact to an individual to stop out of school and then come back later and take a long time to finish. So a student who finishes in 4 years, we might expect that they're paying about $35,000 of tuition. As you extend that out, you see both the opportunity cost and the additional tuition cost that a student has to pay. And you look at a student who is waiting 5 years, 7 years, 10 years to finish their degree, they are missing the earnings that would go with the completion of the baccalaureate, and they are also paying a lot more tuition over that period of time. It is not economically sensible to stretch out your academic career. So what are we doing to change that? Scholarships, most critical thing. Over the last 4 years in increasing scholarship awards. That is thanks to people like you who are helping us support scholarships and to us using the dollars we have more wisely to help our students. Another thing that's quite important is giving our students the aid they deserve. We have had a fairly low participation rate in the federal financial aid application. So Pell Grants, that's what FAFSA stands for. We have made big efforts to get our students to complete that paperwork and and have the opportunity for aid. I would say also that for Utah students, this is an important slide. Some of you asked specifically about the cost of higher education. Higher education has increased dramatically in cost, no question about it. It's important to say your university is very affordable. Look where we stand among our Pac-12 and Big Ten peers. Absolutely the most affordable. The next up in the Pac-12 are the blue bars. So we're quite a ways down over our nearest Pac-12 competitors of Oregon State. The U is remarkably affordable for a flagship research university. Here's another bit of data. This one, I hope I don't offend anyone. We are often asked to compare and benchmark ourselves against Utah universities. What I can tell you there is the U is the most expensive. There's no question about it. We also have the highest graduation rate and the lowest percentage of students who leave with debt. So my pitch on this is the U is remarkably affordable. And you can see some of our other institutions where many students are leaving not with a degree and with debt. That's the kind of debt you don't want to have. So my own view of this is that student loan debt is not a problem for the majority of students at the U. The state of Utah has the lowest amount of student loan debt in the country and very, very low default rates. What I think I might suggest is that we need to help our students strategically use debt to complete school. Rather than taking 8 years or 10 years to finish, to, as they get near completion, assume a little bit of debt and cross the finish line, successfully completing the degree, making a big difference in their lifelong outcomes. I think one of the things we're contemplating here is a very, very low interest internal loan that I think we might be able to help more of our students, particularly students like Glenn, who are very close to finishing their degrees. There are other universities, I think Gunnar from Purdue, hate to call on you, Gunnar, I won't make you say anything, it's a guess, that would be mean. But Purdue has a very interesting program called Backup Boiler. And it's an income sharing agreement where there's a pool of investors that are agreeing to help students and students pay back over time. I think that would be very good for the U to consider some creative programs to help our students think about responsible ways to take a bit of debt at near the completion of their degree so that they can finish. Now I'm going to transition a little bit and tell you about some other things we're doing. You've heard a lot about big data. Probably those of you that are in business are using data analytics and big data all the time, and we know people that are in the healthcare industry or anywhere related to health that our capacity to know things and target treatments and interventions is very much defined by data. The same is true for college students. We don't need to wait until students get into trouble to reach out to them. U has put a big emphasis on early indicators of students who need our help and a lot of assertive outreach to get the assistance those students need to them. So for example, the grade you earn in your very first math class that first semester turns out to be a very strong predictor of how you're going to do as a student. We don't have to wait till a student gets into trouble. We can reach out and help them. The first term grade point average is very important. And even those of us that are using technology in teaching, even whether a student is on technology early in the semester, turns out to be a very powerful predictor. This is a student named Dallas. Dallas is a student who was helped by our early outreach. So there's using data analytics, we were able to see that Dallas was not attending class and not participating in some aspects of her class. There was an early outreach effort by a student success coach to her. Back and said, your email reached me just in time. I was just about ready to leave the university. I don't feel like I belong here. And then that student success advocate created a relationship, met with her several times. She now works for the university. Quite a good success story for that kind of early intervention. A couple other things I'd mention. Our online course portfolio, I think, is very, very important. Many of our students are working 20 or more hours a week. A quarter of our students as undergraduates marry before they complete the degree. Our students are managing very complex lives. Online courses are flexible ways they can stay in school and continue to work toward their degree. Maybe more important than just being able to take a class, though, is being able to get that upper mid-division coursework that Teresa was asking me for 4 years ago. And I will tell you now, there's about 20 academic programs, many of them high-demand programs, that you can complete your degree using online coursework. That's a big step forward for the U in terms of helping our students. Now, how about this one, living on campus? Who would imagine that the ability to live on campus for just 1 year, your first year ideally, makes such a difference in your connection to the university, your development of relationships, and your ability to stay and complete the degree. Students who live on campus 1 year have a 12% higher graduation rate. They're much more likely to stay, to finish, to connect. You can also see this data reflected here. The students who are able to live on campus have a higher average grade point average. You can see there's 4 years and 5 years of data there. It's been a consistent trend all along. But the students who are able to live on campus for a year tend to do much better academically. So why don't we have everybody live on campus for a year? How about it? Are there parents in the room? Parents sending kids to college? Yeah, you might have a little different view of it. You never know. You might be happy about it. But what's holding us back? Once you know this, don't we want everyone to live there? The cost is a barrier for some folks, right? And what else is a barrier? What's a barrier for me at the university? Any ideas? Space. I don't have enough beds. We do not have enough capacity. Once we know this, we better get on it. We better make it a possibility for everybody who wants to live on campus. So we're at that. In terms of the youth transformation, I hope that we are soon making this project a reality to significantly expand what is possible with university housing and allow our students who want to live on campus to be able to live on campus. So this is a project that we're just in the planning stages of and hope to be able to get approval through the regents and all the necessary steps in order to be able to move forward. Here's another thing that really helps our students a lot. The student's name is Victor. Victor is the first in his family to go to college. He's very much a success story. He's very near the finish line. What is it that helped Victor in terms of his schooling? The opportunity to work on campus. So Victor has worked at the campus, the Student Life Center, the campus rec facility since the very beginning of his time at the U. He's an economics major. He's almost done, and no one will be happier than Victor, or his supporting cast of characters. The entire staff of the Student Life Center is invested in Victor's success. And I feel certain that he will finish. But that made his life so much smoother. He didn't have to leave campus for his job, come back to campus for the next class. He could walk. He had a community of mentors who could help him through school. Very much a University of Utah success story. So I think you have a sense of some of the efforts underway, whether it's the development of online courses that are very strategic to help, the work to help students live on campus, the opportunities to provide scholarships and financial assistance that get people over the finish line. The president often says that students are job one. Students are the #1 goal in our strategic agenda. Promote the success of our students to transform their lives. This is a University of Utah imperative. I want to return to that theme I mentioned at the beginning about your university and transformation, because it very much is. A couple of points on that. Last year, fall 2016, we welcomed the largest and most academically prepared freshman class ever. We are on track to significantly surpass that this fall. Now, you're saying, but don't you already know? They're there, right? If you've been anywhere near campus, the students are back, they're there. It takes us a few days to get to the dust settling on the final numbers, but we believe that our freshman class this year will be over 4,000 students. The largest ever, and on track and on pace to be the most academically prepared class ever. This is the ACT scores and grade point averages, and you can see the last 4 or 5 years have been a wonderful upward trajectory. The U is attracting top talent from Utah, from the region, and from the nation. This is wonderful. We are a flagship university. It is our responsibility to provide access and high quality experiences for talented students. We are working very, very hard to do that. So stay to the message of transformation. I'm going to show you a brief, inspiring, I hope, video, and then I'll be back to answer any questions you might have. See if we can make this work. It looks promising. It might be too much.
Imagine you.
It's possible that it has just too much memory for our little computer here. I'm not positive. It's difficult. You may have seen this.
Here comes the new
You have any ideas? Oh, good idea. Very good. What a wonderful tip. So, my instruction, stop, let it download, answer a few questions, we'll give it another go, which could work really well. Nice, inspiring finish. All right, questions, yes, and I know my job is to repeat the question. I don't know, do you identify yourselves, or how do you all do that?
I'll just ask a question. My question is, you addressed the issue about where the cost is within the Pac-12 and some other schools. School's still a lot more expensive than one I was a student.
Yes.
And why is that?
Yeah.
And I want you to lay it out, even the ugly stuff, like the state doesn't fund students like they used to.
Yes. So I did toy with including that graph. So the question is, why college is so much more expensive right now? And among you, if anybody can remember what your first tuition bill was, that's always an interesting exercise. And it's kind of revealing of the age range in the room, I would say. I cannot remember what mine was, but I remember it was significantly less than they are right now, that's for sure. So why has college cost increased so much? So certainly one factor is that states don't have the capacity to help higher education the way they used to. And I was going to include a graph that showed the point in time when state support and tuition dollars as part of the overall budget, the lines cross. So tuition is now a larger part of our overall budget than state support. And that is certainly a part of it. I will say in defense of Utah, Utah has remained a relatively supportive state of higher education, probably why our costs are so much lower. Our colleagues at the University of Oregon had to increase their tuition by 11% this fall. Their state has really, really moved away from supporting higher ed. So while I realize that we're fortunate, there is the truth that states have many needs, and it's difficult for them to continue to support at the same level. It's also true that costs inside universities have gone up, and I think in fairness, we need to look carefully at ourselves and how we use resources and the efficiency with which we run our operation. Research universities are expensive. Research is an expensive business. My own belief is that it is an enormous benefit to students to be part of a research university. You can be part of generating knowledge, working with a faculty member, not just having it translated to you. So I believe that's an investment worth making, and I will defend that, but that is a part of the cost. I think another part of the cost is the kinds of requirements, bureaucracy, and compliance that have been put on universities that have meant different kinds of staffing. And I guess a fourth thing I would mention, and you can decide yourself if this is right or not right. Professors are talented people, and the salary expectations of universities in order to attract and keep good people have gone up as well. And I think when you put that whole mix together, the cost of higher education has really escalated. At the same time, I think we've done a much better job, and I think that U has been incredibly responsible. You should be proud of your university for keeping costs down to the extent we can, and for scholarshiping and creating a lot of awards to help students in need. Yes?
The upward tuition getting into classes problem has been with you and elsewhere present. And my own personal experience as a trustee of one of the state universities is that the faculty were just plain not very sensible in terms of setting their class times and adding sections when needed to get people through their own class.
Yeah.
Do you have an iron fist? You treat me
An iron fist and a velvet glove, we hope, right? But yes, what a good question. The issue of kind of bottlenecks in the curriculum and in the coursework. We've spent a lot of time doing the large-scale data analytics to find out when students leave the university without completing a degree, what do they tell us is the problem? And they will tell us that they weren't able to get some of the courses they needed. So we've worked very hard on that. I have found quite responsive departments and deans when we could give them the help they needed. So we've tried to do our part to help them, that is the resources and also even the data and guidance so that they can make good decisions. And we found a pretty impressive and responsive effort. That is work that will have to continue all along. I think we started a group this spring preparing for a large class this fall, which we're thrilled about. But we started working in March to make sure we would have enough sections and enough seats in the key courses that we needed. So good question. Yes, sir.
Nationally, first generation students are one of the highest risk factors.
Yeah.
You only briefly mentioned it with that one student that was working on campus. It was never part of the risk factors you showed on there. Is that because that's not an issue in Utah?
No, so that very good enunciation there. The question's about first generation students. About 30% of our students are the first in their family to go to college. I think it's a very significant issue in Utah, a very significant issue. And I think it's probably going to continue to be as we think about the population demographics and shifts. And it is important for us to think about the particular needs of students who are not coming to the university with an experienced guide, not a family member. We try to do that by putting students in a cohort learning program their first year. That program makes a big difference. The students take a series of general education courses together in a community with a faculty guide. That program has a very powerful outcomes that are positive for students. We need to make it possible for everyone who's a first generation student. I'm working my way over. Here you go.
And you defend the policy of tenure. I know specifically at the university from several deans who are professors who are outdated, who are old, who are not producing. They cannot get rid of them because of the tenure situation.
So yes, I think I can defend tenure, and I would go at it in two ways. One, the system works well as long as you have a process for reviewing the tenured faculty every 5 years, and you do that with substance and you act on it. And I can tell you that Utah in many ways is doing a little better than some other peer institutions. Since the last 4 years that my history at Utah, there have been a number of cases who have been faculty who have been reviewed who are tenured who decide to move on to the next phase of their life, they leave the university. So I think the system works when you take it seriously in that fashion. I think the system also works in terms of when you tenure people carefully and you do a very thorough effort at about the 7-year mark. The probationary period is very long for faculty in the tenure track. You have to take that very, very seriously. You do not want to tenure people that aren't going to be long-term productive members of your community. A third thing I'd say about tenure, certainly the academic freedom issue, you probably know that well, I won't reiterate that. But I would say it's a lot like other market factors and market issues. If we want to compete against the big institutions in the country, and we do already, and we want to, we will not be able to do that without offering tenure to faculty. So I think the keys are make sure the faculty deserve it, have earned it, and have the passion to reinvent themselves throughout their career. And then have a stringent tenure faculty review where you can help people move along if it's not the right thing.
What can the university do to increase more Latino population participation? I'm very concerned. I've looked at the numbers. The chance of a Latino Utahn graduating from the university are very, very low. That concerns me. I'm not particularly a big affirmative action guy, but we need to reverse that trend. How do we do it?
So the question is about the growing demographic in Utah of Latina population, and what do we do to increase college opportunity and most particularly success for that population? And it's a good place for me to say that's a fabulous question. Access without completion is not helping. That is a big, big national failure. when you open the door to your institution, you must make a commitment to be sure you're there financially and in every way to make sure students can get through to completion. And the examples, whether it's employment on campus, whether it's a loan program or a scholarship, whether it's the kind of interventions that help people stay and succeed, we have to do that. So on the front end, how do we reach students of color? I will tell you that the first year class, the last couple of years, and this will surprise you, at the University of Utah has been 30% students of color. We are reaching young people who are from underrepresented backgrounds. Young Utah and my age Utah look quite different. And I think this is important for the future of Utah, that we are attracting that talent. I think the outreach needs to begin very early. Elementary school, junior high school, that the U has groups of people doing college preparation work, talking with students and families about college very early. I think we have to provide the kind of financial assistance and sort of student success advocate coaching that really help people gain access to the resources and get through school.
So how does that 30% admission rate now translate to a graduation rate, which I know is your issue?
Yeah, it varies quite a lot by racial and ethnic group. I'll tell you the biggest variable where it varies, this will surprise you, the women versus men. Women nationally have about an 8% higher graduation rate than men. Women who enter colleges, this may go against what you think is happening. Men in Utah at the U, it's about 6% higher. So many people sort of have the idea that it's young women that are vulnerable and drop out. It's actually not true. When we attract talented students to the U, women are more likely to stay and complete the degree. Students of color have a lower graduation rate. It is a little bit lower. I think most of that is about resources. Financially, many students need some more financial assistance than we've heard of. I think that's pretty important for us to do. I think Julie might be giving me the sign. Okay. Oh, good idea. Good idea. Well, I feel like I should let my new young alum colleague ask me a question. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, does the university's sports success have a relationship with the quality and quantity of freshman students you get? It's like the Pac-12 move. Did that help the university?
Oh, I think it's helped us a lot. So I do a lot of student recruitment events. So if I go to Walnut Creek in California, it's inevitable that it'll be a room like this of prospective students and families. So I'll say, well, tell me why you want to come to the U. What are you excited about? And in that group, often the first answer will be something about the Pac-12. So students are more aware of the University of Utah around the region and around the country because of our membership in Pac-12. I'll also say, if you want to think about excellent universities, aspirational peers and current peers, the Pac-12 is a pretty good place to be. So I think it's been great for us. Increases our visibility, increases interest, helps us benchmark ourselves against the kind of universities we are and want to be. So it's a great question. I think I've heard that this Rotary thing is really serious. At 128, you get the axe. So, and now it's 129, so I better stop. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for all the great questions, and thank you for those really thorough answers, Ruth. The book that we have this sign that we're giving to Franklin Elementary is Whoosh, and it is obviously about really big squirt guns. The next meeting is day after Labor Day, September 5th. It's at the JSMB. It's Dr. Scott Kellerman talking about Rotary and the Botwa Pygmies. See you next week.